So Pete, welcome to Astroline. First of all, tell us how your off-season's been, and has it been a little bit different than last off-season when things were a little late in terms of hiring James Click? Have you guys had a chance to bond and have what you could consider a more normal off-season?
Yeah, I think so. Obviously, normal's kind of been redefined this year, but yeah, we've been rolling through our normal processes and everything, and the calendar's turned over. Now we've got our eyes set on preparing for spring training, so it moves quick, but we're excited, and hopefully we can get things back to normal.
When you get past the new year, does it feel like things ramp up and things have to speed up to get ready because baseball's right around the corner?
Yeah, every day feels like 2 or 3 days. It's kind of hard to imagine this is hard to believe it's only a third day back, because it's just kind of like an avalanche of things, and especially this year with everything that we have to be mindful of and prepare contingency plans for if and when things could change. So yeah, it's a very busy time of year after a nice quiet period during the holiday break.
Yeah, you mentioned the contingency plans and preparation, because I mean, normally you kind of know when everything's going to be. Spring training is going to start this date for the big leaguers, and then the minor league camp starts this time. Big league season starts this time. Minor league season starts that time. I mean, we don't even know when the minor league season is going to start officially. No schedules have been released on the minor league side, and obviously the hope is the big league side starts on time. But when you talk about contingency plans, that has to be really tricky, because it's not like for sure, okay, if it doesn't go this way, then it's going to go that way. I mean, it could go in so many different directions.
Yeah, that's right. And it really, there's, cascading effects on down the line with different things. So we just have to do our best to kind of simulate. And, I guess if there's a silver lining from last year, it's that, you got to plan for a lot of different angles. I don't think anybody imagined what happened last year could have, but it prepared us to approach things in a way that, gives us some flexibility there.
What's the communication been like and the message been to a lot of the players, particularly the guys on the minor league side where there's a little bit more uncertainty? Is it just kind of prepare as if everything's going to be normal, or what's kind of been that communication?
Yeah, I mean, just try to take advantage of this time, for things that would otherwise be more difficult, especially strength development for our players. And we had a bunch of guys come in for an instructional camp this past October, and guys came in great shape, and we saw a bunch of pitchers hit new all-time high velos, hitters, big exit speed jumps. So it was really exciting to see how the guys were taking advantage of this time. So they've lost a lot of the games, but guys have really taken advantage of this, physically.
Pete Putila joining us on Astroline. A lot of people who are listening to Pete tonight are wondering just about those minor leaguers. And you mentioned some increased velocities from some of the pitchers and instructional. Overall, though, the guys will never get that year back. And that's going to be very difficult, because that's a wasted season for them in their development. But now that we go forward, I would think the challenge is not extending them too far, coming off a season where many of them didn't throw any pitches in a competitive nature.
Yeah, it's definitely going to turn some of the conventional approaches on their heads in terms of incremental increases year to year, because everybody's going to be starting from zero for 2020. So that's something where our sports science department utilizes a lot of different measurement technology to make sure that our guys are producing force at certain levels that keeps them safe. And it's going to be a matter of monitoring their workload and making adjustments appropriately. I think some of the updated guidelines in the minor leagues, you'll see some expanded rosters that'll help in terms of being able to progress guys back at a bit of a slower pace, more safely. So, but yeah, it's definitely going to be a new challenge, and it's just been something that's never been done before.
I know one of the challenges in 2021 for the in 2020 for the Astros was the health of their pitching, and overall having to use so many guys that had never thrown a pitch at the major league level. And I think one of the bright spots when you look back on 2020 is just how well these guys performed. I think there was even one playoff game where, or maybe the first 6 pitchers all hadn't thrown a pitch at the major league level, or maybe one guy had before 2020. Your thoughts looking back on how impressive it was for some of these young guys to step up and what that means for the future?
Yeah, it was really exciting. I think we're always biased looking at our own guys, but we've always felt confident in the young guys we have, and with the success we've had at the major league level, and some of the free agent signings, it's been a lot of veterans, and we haven't had the opportunity to see as many young guys. And because of the success, we've been drafting later. So some of these guys were unheralded because they didn't have big signing bonuses or weren't drafted in the first round, but we had confidence in them, and there's another wave coming, and there's another one behind them. So we're really excited to have more opportunities for these guys. So hopefully they can step up.
Yeah, it had to have been really exciting because, I mean, I think especially you spent so much time on the minor league side, you're always talking about the depth and how these guys can help, but to actually see it come to fruition. I mean, if you look at the way last season went and all the rookie pitchers that the Astros used coming into this year, you might think, oh man, they're going to be in trouble, especially pitching wise. But I'd have to think that you guys feel pretty good after seeing the likes of Anoli Paredes and Blake Taylor and Andre Scrub that you're in better shape than maybe you even thought you were.
Yeah, definitely. And I think sometimes pitching can be a bit of a roller coaster where you feel like you have a lot of depth, and then some injuries might pop up. But the guys in the minor leagues have done a great job developing pitchers, and the players put so much work into refining their game, and it's really exciting to see it show. And like I said, we have a crop of new guys that I think we might see this year as well. So hopefully they keep contributing.
And I think there was another guy, we talk about all the guys who hadn't pitched in the big leagues before 2020. Framber Valdez, we had seen, the last few years, he's been in the system, he's pitched at the big league level. We knew the quality of stuff. The results didn't always match that until this 2020 season when, he really became one of the key guys down the stretch and pitched great in the postseason. Was there anything in particular that you and the Astros saw can pinpoint as to what was different for Framber this year? I mean, the results were different, but anything beyond that led to that?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest difference performance-wise was the strike throwing. Obviously, he rolls a ton of ground balls. He's been able to bail himself out of situations, but he personally credits his work with one of our sports psychologists in the DR, Dr. Andy Nunez, and also his work with our strength and conditioning coach there, Jeremy Guzman. So he really dedicated himself, and Guzman brought weightlifting equipment to Valdez's house, and he was doing deadlifts in the street out in front of his house, and it was really pretty amazing to see what these guys did just to get workouts in. And a lot of these guys had to get pretty creative. Like Paredes, he had just kind of like a branch with a couple cinder blocks on it, and he was using that for different workouts. So yeah, the guys they really stepped up and used that period of uncertainty to stay in top physical shape. And I think the work that Framber did just to stay calm and focused during the game was obvious. Sometimes you'd even see him smiling after he gave up a home run. So we're excited to see him come back out here again next year. And I think he said he built a weight room in his house now, so he should be all set there.
That was so much fun to watch his progression last year, and Paredes and other guys that stepped up in a big way. You said there's another wave coming. Are you willing to throw out some names so fans can maybe get excited? Obviously, the biggest name that we've heard about for years is Forrest Whitley. Do you think we might see Forrest in 2021? Is it a Johanse Torres, a Tyler Ivey? Like, are these some of the names? Are there any others you can add that we might be able to see burst onto the scene in 2021?
Yeah, I think Forrest, of course, huge stuff. Before he shut down in the alternate site, he was 97, 98. He struck out. He faced 7 hitters. He struck out 7 hitters. So it was the best we'd ever seen him. And he's back to throwing. He's throwing bullpens. He's getting ready. So we're excited. And of course, the other guys that were added to the roster, the likes of Solis and Solomon and Ivy. Those are guys, obviously, because they're on the roster, a little bit of a higher chance of seeing them sooner. So, we're excited about those guys. They all have, 4-pitch mixes and throw strikes, and so like I said, some of them are a little more heralded than others, but they're all really getting it done. So excited to see what 2021 holds for them.
Now, something has to happen soon, because a week from Friday, we're getting to within a month, basically, of when spring training's supposed to start. So what are you hearing? Are we thinking everything's going to go off on schedule, or is that still to be determined?
Yeah, so we're preparing for spring training to start, on its normally scheduled time, and Carl Schneider's, making plans to get the equipment truck packed up and everything. So, we're prepared for that, barring any kind of circumstances that could change things. But yeah, we're full go ahead on planning for that.
Anything going on right now at the complex down in West Palm Beach? Are you even able to have guys there working out or getting treatment?
Yeah, so we're able to have guys who either live locally or need medical care or rehab activities. So it's a limited basis, but those are the groups of players that we can have work out of the complex now. Also,
speaking of the complex, we talked earlier about instructional league, and you mentioned some of the pitchers, and obviously we didn't get a chance to see what instructional league. I mean, nobody did who wasn't with one of the teams. Anybody in particular really stand out to you from what you guys saw in instructional league? Anyone who maybe took a leap forward, or you were really impressed with what you saw with a long layoff?
Yeah, I think the guy that stands out is Hunter Brown. I think he was out of the 4th round. Wayne State. He pitches at 96 to 98, and he's got a Tyler Glasnow type curveball, huge break, 83, 85 miles an hour. With a 88, 90 mile an hour slider. So another guy who's developed quickly, and the velo's big, and I'm really hoping we can get some games so that these guys can go out and show their stuff. But yeah, he's definitely the guy that stands out among that group this year.
One of the big questions fans probably have right now is what the Houston Astros outfield might look like in 2021. We know we have Kyle Tucker in one of those positions. What are your thoughts as where you guys stand now going into spring training in a month or so, and what the outfield might look like come opening day?
Yeah, for sure. So we have some internal options. Chas McCormick, somebody who was added to the roster during the playoffs. He's somebody we feel good about. He's got good plate discipline. Had a big jump in power from 18 to 19. That's really the big driver that put him on the map. And defensively, he's strong. So also obviously Miles Straw out there. So when we look at some of the internal options we have already, it's a really strong base defensively across the board. And then we saw what the guys did offensively last year. And then obviously our pro scouting group here is working hard, vetting out free agent options, different options across the market. So, working hard there. It's obviously an area where we lost, a couple key guys. Those guys are right at the top of the market right now. So obviously difficult to replace that, but we feel good about where we are, and we're continuing to work hard to see, where we can improve.
Have you guys determined whether or not you want to see Jordan in the outfield, and if so, how much? Yeah,
the primary objective is, just keeping him healthy, keeping him, walking to the plate every day. So, we could see him out there a bit. It would maybe be a little bit more limited than you might normally see, but he's doing sprints. He's hitting. So he's in a really good spot right now with his rehab. So, we're excited to see him back out there.
Speaking of the outfield, the Astros signed Jose Siri this offseason. Was announced, I guess, a couple of weeks ago, and he was a guy who was a top prospect in the Red system. That's where he was for 2019. Got to AAA last year. Saw time at the Reds and Giants alternate sites. Looks like a guy with a lot of tools, just hasn't quite put it together yet. What are you hoping that Jose Siri can provide in an Astros uniform?
Yeah, he's some of our pro scouting guys identified as having just really stellar defensive capabilities, and then as you said, he's got a lot of tools. There's a lot of power in there, and it's been fun to watch him lately in the Dominican Winter League. He's been going off at the plate, so yeah, we're excited about the tools. I mean, he has a good floor with the defense, so just another player there to add depth, and there could be opportunities for him depending on what happens. So we're excited to have him aboard.
It's tricky enough evaluating guys in your own system after this 2020 season with only 60 games at the big league level, and then obviously a lot of guys were at the alternate site. How tricky is it when you're evaluating guys from other organizations, especially someone like Siri? We mentioned he was at alternate sites. I know there, it was kind of hit or miss with some teams in terms of access to video from other teams' alternate sites. Were you guys relying more on past performance in 2019 and before that? How much were you able to extract for 2020 when evaluating a guy like Siri and other guys that you might potentially bring into the organization?
Yeah, so MLB, facilitated some video data sharing programs, and that was useful, just to make sure guys were still, at the same levels. And you saw some guys make some jumps, but really tough we couldn't see anybody in person at the alternate site. And then during the instructional camps, those were, a month and a half long. And so we had scouts, head out to those and check out the guys. But I know just based on hours, we battled a lot of rain, so we'd play games on 2 different fields, split things up. So it makes it tough on scouts to get that same kind of coverage. So yeah, we're looking at a lot of 2019, and then obviously making sure they're healthy and trying to spot any improvements or declines, with the video and data and scouting coverage that we do have. But yeah, it's really difficult for the player evaluation group.
Pete Putila joining us on Astroline, assistant GM of the Astros. And Pete, in the previous mention of the outfield, you talked about the free agent class. And so far, here we are, first week of January, the A guys, if you will, haven't really signed yet. A lot of relief pitchers haven't really signed yet. Had you guys anticipated that it might be a slower road, or has it surprised you that more guys are still out there and available as we crossed into the new year?
It's kind of hard to say. I mean, we knew that, this was a really odd year, and the pandemic is still unfortunately raging, and, there seems to be some light at the end of the tunnel. But obviously, I think in 2019, people would say there's no chance any of this could happen. That's wild. But now here we are, and I think people, are considering the fact that uncertainty is a real thing. And I'm not sure that has something to do with it, but I think, once one domino falls, the market will move, quickly after that. But yeah, it's definitely something that we thought, could happen, but, we'll see. It could, move pretty quick here and be sort of back to normal. But yeah, definitely just a lot of uncertainty everyone's dealing with.
And a lot of the uncertainty for Astros fans is knowing that there's a possibility they could lose one of their favorite players in George Springer, or even one of their favorite players in Michael Brantley. Those guys have definitely endeared themselves into the hearts of Astros fans, George over a longer period of time than Michael. Are you guys still hopeful that maybe one of those guys could still find their way back into an Astros uniform in 2021?
Yeah, definitely, hopeful for that. But obviously they put up quite the production there, and they've earned their opportunities to, seek out, deals in the free agent market. And, it's one of those, they were a couple of the best outfielders in the game, and now they're free agents, so that, everyone's got a shot at them. So, it makes it, even tougher to, bring them back. But I mean, they gave as much as they could to the team. So happy for them. It's, the accomplishments, the things that they brought to the team, really exciting. But yeah, hopefully something can work out, but we'll see.
How involved are you on the major league side, Pete, and with some of the player acquisition and various moves? I mean, I know a lot of your attention's on the minor league side. How involved are you on the major league side?
Yeah, so I started getting more involved this past year, but we have a big group of staff in the front office here that really drives our efforts there, and it's really all hands on deck kind of operation, just given the other clubs that we maintain talks with in the trade market and whatnot. But yeah, I'm still heavily involved in player development and sports medicine and performance, and those are big parts of our operation, while also keeping a pulse on what's happening in the player acquisition area. But definitely a balancing act. But we have a group of staff on the player evaluation group who are very talented and really driving a lot of those efforts.
There's a lot of attention paid to player development now, and some of the tools that are out there that can allow you to evaluate guys, even throwing bullpens or just taking batting practice or taking some swings off a tee. Maybe fans aren't as aware of some of the advancements on the, you mentioned sports performance and sports science, some of the advancements on that level, since those aren't necessarily as visible. What are some of the biggest advancements and biggest changes that you've seen on that side of the game? And I know you've been involved in that, and the Astros have really tried to ramp up those departments over the last 2 or 3 years or so.
Yeah, I think TrackMan is a technology that's kind of formed the bedrock of our player development department in terms of understanding how players are performing, areas of potential improvement. We layer on a lot of high-speed video cameras so that we can see the movements in more detail. And one of the bigger technologies coming along now is Hawkeye, and they offer not only ball tracking, but they also track the players in the field. So you can see sprint speed on the bases and in the infield and the outfield. And also they have higher frame rate cameras that allow you to track the skeleton of the pitcher and the hitter along with the bat. So that's going to be a new data set that potentially revolutionizes certain parts of the game, because you'll essentially have similar data that you would normally see from a lab where somebody has all the markers on them, with the Vicon system. We could potentially get that in games. So that's something that we're excited to explore moving forward.
How about metrically defensively? I know last year it was all about the metrics in terms of who won a Gold Glove, and a lot of people would argue, including myself, that Carlos Correa had the best year at shortstop of anybody in the American League. J.P. Crawford ended up winning it. Are the defensive metrics changing and getting better year by year, or is that still an area that is tough to really quantify based on shifting, based on UZR, based on a lot of different things? Where are we defensively with metrics, and is there still a ways to go?
I think they've gotten better, but I definitely do think there's still a ways to go, because a lot of them don't understand the starting position of the fielder, which obviously has a huge impact. But systems like Hawkeye will help to improve those in the future. So it'll be interesting to see how much of that finds its way into those, the voting for the Gold Glove.
How excited are you? We mentioned the outfield and some question marks. How excited are you to see the entire infield come back for 2021, including the catcher Martin Maldonado, who's been back and forth a few times over the last few years?
Yeah, real excited. I mean, it's obviously we're spoiled to have the group that we do on the dirt. So really looking forward to getting everybody back and seeing what they can do out there.
One guy, speaking of infield, that intrigues me on the minor league side is Jeremy Pena. And I mean, you talk about 2020 kind of being a lost year. It felt like, just watching what we saw of Pena in spring training, like this is a guy who had a chance to maybe do some things and really improve his standing in the organization if he had gotten to play a minor league season in 2020. What have you guys seen from Jeremy Pena, and what do you think is next for him?
Yeah, he's somebody who, he played in the Cape when he was in college at Maine, and, we brought him in, and we've pushed him since then. And, he was in the Arizona Fall League. It was a tough assignment for him, but he's the type of player who, even if he might struggle, he takes from that experience things he needs to work on and just keeps moving forward. And he's seen some of the fruits of his labor in Winter League. He was named Rookie of the Year in the Dominican Winter League. So really happy for him, seeing some of those results. But yeah, very physically gifted, athletic shortstop. He's got a good arm and really runs well. And he's got quite a bit of power at the plate, good contact skills, and he's just been working on tapping into more of that power. But he's gotten to play with Fernando Tatis and a few other big leaguers on the winter ball team this year. So curious to hear what he's learned from those guys.
Yeah, you mentioned winter ball and Pena, the success that he had, and you mentioned Jose Siri earlier, who had a 2-homer game the other day in the postseason in the Dominican Winter League. How closely are you guys kind of following those winter ball games, especially since obviously you don't have a whole lot to go on from the regular season this past year?
Yeah, I mean, we're fans just like everybody watching, and we like to see what the guys can do out there. So it's been nice just from that perspective, just to see the guys go out and compete. And also just to see, how they put things together. Kent Emanuel's been down there throwing. He felt good. Jeremy Pena, obviously, we just talked about. It's been great to see them get out and compete and see pitching. And it just helps, like you said, to make up for some of the lost time. So, definitely been following it closely. Some of the guys have been watching, the Spanish broadcast and trying to pick up some Spanish skills there. But yeah, it's been fun to watch for sure.
Yeah, speaking of making up for lost time, I'm sure one of the toughest things to deal with in this strange year is you always have a decision to make about where to start guys at the beginning of a season coming out of spring training. And now you've got guys that are all a year older, but without the year of experience under their belts, unless they were at the alternate training site. Is that one of the most difficult things this offseason, trying to discuss where to place guys, and maybe a guy would have started at a lower level and now maybe bumped up just because of his age without having gone through that experience?
Yeah, it really is. And, obviously we had the draft last year. We signed some new players, and, that kind of bumps everybody up a bit. So there's some of that where they're just kind of forced up the system. I think that'll happen a bit across the league. So it'll help to normalize it a little bit. But yeah, it's definitely kind of odd looking at the depth chart, trying to figure out where exactly guys are going to end up. And it might, kind of reframe how some people view the need for certain players to kind of have that slow progression up the system. We try to promote guys aggressively when they perform, but and we saw some guys thrust into action this year who hadn't pitched above high A, and they did pretty well. So I think it speaks to the talents that those guys have, and that hopefully these guys can make the adjustment, jumping up to the higher levels this year.
And the highest of levels now is right in the Houston Astros backyard with Sugarland. What a unusual circumstance, but what a great, comforting circumstance to have AAA and major league facilities within the proximity of basically a suburb of the city. What are your thoughts about Sugarland?
Yeah, we're excited to move in there. Staff's working hard, make improvements on the facility, and it's going to be a nice change in terms of having the guys right down the road, and it'll be an enhanced quality of life for those guys too. They won't have to worry about moving and whatnot if they get the call. So yeah, we're excited all around to have them just down the road. And
much has been talked about, obviously, about the reshuffling of the minor leagues, and TK mentioning Sugarland, also Corpus Christi, Astros owned affiliate, they're back as AA. Fayetteville is back, also owned by the Astros as an A-ball affiliate. But Asheville, North Carolina, the Asheville Tourist, added into the mix. I know when this kind of shuffling was going on in the minor leagues, major league clubs had some input in terms of what affiliates they wanted. How did that process shake out with Asheville getting added to the fold for the Astros?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and obviously MLB had fit a lot of pieces of the puzzle together, and throughout the process, we've given them our feedback, and we're excited to partner with Asheville. The climate there is solid, and it's a ballpark I haven't been to personally, but I'm told there's some nice old-timey kind of vibes coming from it. I think Babe Ruth played there, they said. So
That's right.
Yeah, we hear great things about the town too. Just a lot to do there. It's obviously a tourist destination, and the ballpark will be interesting. It's kind of a crackerjack park. I think it's 290 to right field. So we'll see how we make the adjustment there on the pitching side. But yeah, we're looking forward to moving in there.
And it has to make it also easier because Fayetteville is in the eastern part of North Carolina, Asheville's in the western part of North Carolina. So that's to make it easier too in terms of players moving between those two clubs. And also when you have roving instructors or yourself and others, they go down to see one in North Carolina, they can see the other.
For sure. Yeah, it definitely helps to have the clubs kind of clustered. Now we obviously have 2 clubs in Texas plus the major league team, and then the 2 in North Carolina. So definitely makes things easier from a travel perspective.
Pete, we really appreciate the time. We're hoping to see you in person and get to hang out a little bit in West Palm Beach, because I know last year was completely different, but we're not sure what the future holds. Thank you for the time on Astroline tonight, and we look forward to catching up with you sooner than later.
Of course. Thanks for having me, guys. Hopefully see you soon.